Welcome back to Normal Island Live. Sorry for the delay, but we do have something special for you today. We're not going to be doing a normal show today. We are going to be focusing on the Epstein files because many people have forgotten about them, or people haven't forgotten about them, but they're not getting the attention that they need. Obviously, they were released earlier in the year, and so much is still in them, which I have found, which our guest has found today. And we're going to be talking about them, just having a general discussion. It's not going to be the usual show. We're going to be going through different things in the files that I have found, things that our guest has found, having an informed discussion about it based off of other things that we do know and putting some things together, a bit of speculation, no conspiracy, however, there's plenty of them out there. But that's going to be the basis of today's show. And that's the reason why we're late a little bit today. We were just making sure everything's a bit perfect. So I do apologize. Everybody already knows that when I'm hosting, it's always going to be late. But I do apologize. I appreciate the patience from everyone. So today I am joined by the wonderful Alex, who runs his own YouTube channel where he does lots of videos on politics, history, and mixing lots of things in between. Hello, Alex. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Lewis? Thank you very much for having me on Turn Left as well.
This is your first time, right?
Yes, you got me. Finally. Took you long enough.
Would you just like to quickly plug your exact YouTube channel so people can go and find you after this?
Yeah, it's actually two. Political X and the Sunday Roast. I know, greedy. Political X, we try and do current events in politics, and I'll try and make comparisons with historical accounts, but also aim to do movies sometimes. Number of times that you see sort of evil corporations like the Wayland Corporation turning up in real life seems to happen a bit too often for my liking, and you find these parallels with movies on the odd occasion. And my background is I'm a historian, currently a journalist. I was a former teacher, and I was a former football coach. So yeah, that's my background.
That's a great intro, but I just want to check, producer in the background, is Alex's microphone going up and down for you? Because it's going a bit up and down for me.
Do you want me to test the mic?
Do me a favor. That box that says, AI noise reduction or whatever it was. Keep the other ones on, Alex, and just unclick that one for me, and we'll see how you sound when I bring you back on after the general introduction of the show. Right, let's jump into kind of what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, the title of the show is going to be about Epstein, just in general, the files. We will be doing, again, speculation. We will be doing some informed debate, maybe a bit of pushback even on each other about some of the things that we have found in the files. We will not be, there's a lot of stuff that's out there online. People talking about, every time they mentioned beef jerky, they were talking about trafficking children. And we're not going to be kind of going down that avenue, even though as interesting or as entertaining as it might be to kind of try and decode certain things. We're going to be talking about much more solid things that are in the files today. And I want to just give you a little bit of a teaser for the type of stuff that I'll be focused on. If anybody follows me on TikTok, some of the stuff that I've already dove into. I'm specifically talking about the political interference. I just want to start off with this just first email that I found in February, between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein, where Bannon is saying that we are on the cusp of real power. And this is a conversation where they're talking about the money that they have, what they're going to do with it, and where they're going to interfere. But I'll come back to that in just a second. As soon as the files got released, I didn't even know where to look. I didn't know what to do. I knew that obviously most people, and understandably so, would be focusing on anything to do with children, child trafficking, prostitution, any big and famous names that are out there that have been out there for years, and also to discover who else was in the files. But I think one thing that's been massively overlooked is the potential political interference and other activities that Epstein was up to. Now, I understand why maybe some professional journalists out there who have certain editorial standards might not want to pursue certain stories because not all the information that they might need is out there. But there is still some information which I am genuinely shocked has not made it into any news media outlets whatsoever. I found myself frustrated about a week after the files got released because as soon as I noticed that Steve Bannon was seemingly secretly working with Jeffrey Epstein to interfere in politics, mostly around the globe, but hyper-focusing on Europe, I was very frustrated to find an article from The Guardian, which was titled along the lines of Epstein was interested in European far-right politics, along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. And I was so frustrated because that is the biggest downplaying of any headline I've ever seen relating to Jeffrey Epstein, because it is so much more than that and is so much deeper. Now, a couple of weeks later, CNN actually did their own article. It was extensive, but it also wasn't that detailed. They generally talked about how, Bannon and Epstein were having conversations around Europe while Bannon was traveling throughout there, meeting with different leaders, and hinted towards the fact that they seemed to be kind of coordinating together. And I have been obsessively in the files for weeks. Now, over the last few weeks, I've moved. I've been very busy, so I haven't actually been in the files for a few weeks. But now I've got the wonderful opportunity to sit down with Alex today and discuss some of the stuff that I found and he's found. So coming back to we are on the cusp of real power, the second graphic that I'm going to show you today is an email chain between, and it's the same email chain that I showed you earlier. It's the beginning of it, where Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon are discussing their $100 million of Bitcoin that they have. Here it is. You can see on the screen. It's highlighted right. It's highlighted right there. Now, throughout this entire email chain, they are discussing different financial names for different types of transactions for different functions. They're talking about C1Ds and F12s and all this type of stuff. They're basically discussing that they have $100 million of Bitcoin, which sounds completely outlandish, but I will come back to it in a second. If we can just take that back off the screen actually right now. It sounds quite outlandish that they have $100 million of Bitcoin, but it made so much more sense when you look at everything else that's in the files. Now, there is so much that I have found in the files related to this and this interference that we couldn't possibly show every single graphic. So I'm just kind of giving you a basis of the story that I'm going to be talking about today. And we won't be showing everything that we found in the files because it's just too much to put up on screen. If I showed you everything that I found, you would never see me on the screen. Further in this discussion, this is all the same email chain. He specifically talks about how there's no rules in this next graphic that'll come up about there's no rules in crypto. They haven't regulated it yet. Obviously, this email chain is in 2018. This is February 2018. So it's now 8 years later when obviously the UK government are now announcing that they will be banning crypto donations in the UK. And it just kind of shows you how far behind they are. We can take that one down now. Thank you, producer. What is really interesting about everything that I have found is that $100 million seems kind of outlandish. We know that obviously Jeffrey Epstein was very wealthy. According to the files, his financial assessment team, whatever you want to call them, they were sending him a summary every single year. And now in around 2014, they sent him his summary of how much he was worth. And it was somewhere in the region of like 300 to 400 million. If you look at every single summary that is in his email inbox that have been released by the files by the DOJ, his wealth doesn't really go up at all, really, between 2014 and his death. Now, can anybody name me a person who is that rich into the hundreds of millions whose wealth isn't significantly increasing every single year? It didn't make sense. So diving further and further into the files, it then became obvious, and I didn't even know this side of Epstein in the files, that he was massively into the crypto world. And it has been reported on. There's been lots of speculation over the years before, and obviously now after the files have come out, that he was in this world, but we didn't know how far and to what extent. There are lots of articles out there. To a certain extent, some of them don't even make sense to me. It's beyond my knowledge with certain aspects of the crypto world. But what is obvious is that he started messing around in crypto in like the early 2010s. And throughout about 2010, 2011, up until like 2015, 16, he was building a crypto team around him. He was meeting with a guy called Joey Itto, who worked at MIT. He was already reported on quite a few years ago as a person in the crypto world, potentially with Jeffrey Epstein. There is speculation and there is evidence in the files that this is true, but we can't say it actually is without an actual investigation and all that type of stuff. We don't want to get sued. That Jeffrey Epstein may have been funneling money through MIT as part of some sort of scheme. That's all we know, and there is evidence for that in the files. Now, as I was diving into this further and further, I became obsessed. I was spending 12, 14 hours a day in the files, just completely obsessed with this idea that they were using cryptocurrency and other types of interference to interfere in politics. Guys, I have found emails as far as Mongolia where Jeffrey Epstein was communicating with an aide of the president in Mongolia. This has been reported on now weeks ago, that he was getting thanked by this guy for helping the president with his political campaign. That's all there is in there. We don't know what that means. Does he mean money? Does he mean advice? We don't know. But this is how far this guy stretched, to Mongolia. It's absolutely incredible. Now, I was hyper-focusing mainly on Europe and interference in Europe. Now, what's interesting about this email that I showed you earlier with the $100 million in Bitcoin, which again sounds outlandish, but when you actually think about the fact of how much like something like Bitcoin was worth in 2010, 11, 12, pennies really, bit of an under-exaggeration, a few dollars. And then by the time it gets to around 2018, you know, a single Bitcoin is worth in and around about $10,000. So if you think about somebody who's invested early, a guy who is, you know, reported by people in Congress, because we still don't have all of the files, but we know that a senator did say that some of the transactions add up to billions of dollars within the files. They didn't specify if that's, you know, cash, assets, crypto. He just said billions of dollars worth of transactions, which doesn't match up with, obviously, Epstein's net worth. It just doesn't match up at all. Now, I don't think it's wild. I don't think it's wild at all that they could have had $100 million worth of Bitcoin. I don't know about people who are listening right now, but I don't think that's even like that much in the world that, you know, Epstein operated in, and who else knows is involved in this operation. He built up this crypto team behind him, and there's hundreds of emails outside of this one where they are discussing different ways to funnel money into different financial assets and means. They talk about different countries, and there's loads of stuff missing from the files, and there's tons of conversations where people like Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein are talking through texts where they just say, let's take this to a call. So there's just so much missing, but you can piece loads of things together. Now, I mentioned obviously the guy earlier, Joey Itto. So it has been speculated online for years, and people believe that there is more evidence in the files that he is the crypto guy, that he's like the main guy who is linked to Jeffrey Epstein, who helped him do whatever he was doing with crypto. Now, that's still speculation. We can't prove it, but I have actually found a text message, which again, still has not been reported on. And I do have to use some speculation with this text message. Now, if we can just show the text message, this is Jeffrey Epstein talking with Joey Itto. They didn't actually talk that much through text. Most of it was email, and they met up almost every other week for years talking about crypto. They built this crypto team around them. And if you actually look at this message, I'm just going to look at the screen a second just so I read it right. Epstein texts Joey Itto, and this is why you have to look at the dates of this as well. And again, this does involve some speculation, so I don't get sued, where it says, I would like to find a way to fund John Laporta. And then Joey replies saying, cool, let me figure out whether we can do it still through MIT. You know, heard what I said earlier about the conspiracies about money being funneled through MIT. Considering all of the recent press stuff, because obviously this is 2018, Jeffrey is in the press. Understood. Otherwise, I will do it directly. And again, this doesn't confirm, but obviously adds more suspicion to the fact and the speculation that Joey Itto is the guy behind Epstein's crypto potential money laundering, but still unproven. Now, who is John Laporta? I spent ages trying to figure this out. If you Google the name John Laporta, the only person who comes up is a dead musician. I think he played like the violin, I think, or something along those lines. It took me ages to figure it out. And I ended up on a phone call with a friend, and I was just like, who is this person? And he randomly came back to me a few days later and said, by the way, like, obviously Epstein spells things incorrectly all the time, doesn't he? Yeah, he does. He's so bad, guys. Like having to figure out who people are in the files is just wild. I found an email about Nick Clegg where they kept spelling Nick Clegg with 1G. So if you search Clegg, you wouldn't be able to find it. But if you search it with 1G, you can find it. Stuff like this happens all the time. Now, this text, I think, this is speculation. Don't, just putting that out there. There is a guy in Spain called Juan Laporta. And the date of this text message is the same week of the Spanish elections, which we know Steve Bannon was interfering in. That guy is actually on the opposition to the far-right party. And this has led me to potentially speculate that if it is that guy who Jeffrey Epstein is saying that he wants to fund, there is no other evidence in the files anywhere that he had communication with this guy. And again, this is pure speculation because he is the only other person who matches the profile of this name and stature and the timing of the Spanish elections during that period where the Vox Party actually managed to secure their first few seats, where in Spanish media at the time, they were saying this is because of Steve Bannon's influence, because of his organization because of his backing that they managed to get their first ever seats. So they were potentially funding just lots of people to potentially just cause chaos, if that is true. But again, we cannot prove who that person is because it's a misspelling. So this is just pure speculation. But I will round this up. We know from the files that email shows in 2018 February that they were talking about the $100 billion worth of $100 million worth of crypto. We know that from March, Steve Bannon came to Europe. He was, over the next couple of years, he was visiting Viktor Orban in Hungary consistently. This is discussed in the texts, in the files. There are so many meetings. He is meeting with everyone from Nigel Farage. He is rallying protests in the UK for Tommy Robinson when he was jailed at the end of May 25th. Tommy Robinson was jailed on May 25th, 2018. Steve Bannon came to the UK and he was arranging protests, global protests, to free Tommy. Tommy Robinson opened a crypto wallet in June 2018 after he was banned from PayPal. Again, that's all we know. I'm not saying anybody received any funds from anybody. I'm just saying that is the first time that Tommy Robinson opened a crypto wallet. In that wallet that he advertised, there was one donation for around $12,000, the equivalent to about 1 Bitcoin. We don't know where any of this money comes from. This is why the government have decided in the UK to ban crypto. You can't know who is sending money anywhere. It's a very scary world. But again, there's no evidence in the files at all that Tommy Robinson received any money from any of these people at all in any way. I'm just saying that this is what Steve Bannon were doing. They were discussing in the files consistently, coordinating with each other, texting each other every single day almost about Steve Bannon's activities in Europe. You've all probably seen the headlines when the files first came out that Tommy Robinson is mentioned twice in the files. Those two different occasions, because they have not been reported on correctly. There is one where he says, "Well done" on Tommy Robinson. That is the day, and it's 2 hours after it happens, when Tommy Robinson is actually freed from jail on the 1st of August 2018 because there was a technicality with his case and it was processed incorrectly and he managed to walk free. He was later arrested and jailed again for the same crime when it was retried. The day that he was jailed, Epstein sent Steve Bannon another text message, and that was when that famous quote came out, which was "cheap at any price." This was Epstein texting Bannon, not the other way around. Epstein was following the story. There's another text message from the 15th of July 2018 as well, where Epstein texts Steve Bannon saying, "Well done on LBC." Sorry, yeah, so checking the notes. "Well done on LBC." 15th of July 2018. That text message came half an hour after the show finished. Steve Bannon was on Nigel Farage's show in the morning for an hour slot, and he was talking about trying to get Theresa May out. We now know he claims in the files that he helped with getting Theresa May out. He was also doing a free Tommy section on Nigel Farage's show. That's where the quote originally came from. When they talk about cheap at any price, because another quote from the files during that period in that same conversation was about like him being, the hero of Britain. And they talk about this in the files. Why is it that Epstein is texting Bannon about Tommy? It just doesn't make sense to me. But again, I have to say there is no evidence in the files that Tommy either received any money or knowingly received any money or anything like that. I just have to say these are too many coincidences. Steve Bannon is going to France. He's meeting with Marianne Le Pen's party. He's going to Italy and he's meeting with, oh my God, I forgot the name of the guy. Somebody will put it in the comments. Who's the far right guy in Italy? Gone blank. He's going to Spain. He's going to France. He's going to all these different places. He's having secret meetings with Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage. He's having meetings with so many people. He is discussing financing in these text messages, saying that we're going to help the Italians refinance and all these types of stuff. These are all in the files. Why has nobody picked up on this? Why has this not been reported on? Why is there not a single article out there talking about how Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein are claiming that they are going to interfere in politics and they have $100 million in Bitcoin? Why? Why is that not out there? Why is this not being investigated? Why is it that there's very clear evidence of who Jeffrey Epstein's crypto team was in the Epstein files? It's very, very clear. There are so many more names and it's still not really being discussed. Now, that's the rant over. We will continue to discuss more. But with that out there, Alex.
Hello.
That was quite a rant.
That was amazing.
I just want to say that's unscripted. That's unscripted as well. That's all up here.
When you go down these it feels like we're down the rabbit hole. It feels like we're in the twilight.
I feel insane.
Yes, because it is. Because you then have to go back to all these people that were making these conspiracy theory claims 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And you've got to revisit them all, which is absolutely bizarre. It takes a lot for you to be able to just process what's in front of you, nonetheless go back. Because there was a whole thing with Pizzagate
Yeah.
that got pulled up. And we were still pretty sure that's just fabricated nonsense. There was nothing in the basement, but it caused someone to turn up at the pizzeria looking for this basement that didn't exist. But then you're going, look at all the references to pizza within the Epstein files. It's really clear it's a code. We don't know what that code is. And that's just one example of going down this rabbit hole, because some people will go and say it's bodies. Some people will say it's something to do with sex. Others might go and say it's to do with drugs. We just don't know. But because you go down that rabbit hole, you start to question almost everything behind everything. I mean, some people have been saying about Steve Bannon being behind everything. It's so true. And the Epstein files are starting to sort of shine some light and disinfect some of this. But as you said, we're not really seeing much in terms of people being arrested. I mean, the arrest charges that have happened are both Mandelson and Prince Andrew, but they're not to do with trafficking. They're not to do with Virginia Giuffre. They're to do with state secrets being handed over to Jeffrey Epstein. And you sort of go, okay, that's quite important. But then what about the other charges? Because they've denied any wrongdoing all the way through this. And yet at the same time, and we had Crusader Dick. If you're unaware of Crusader Dick on the LBC show, she came out and said to Nick Ferrari that they weren't going to open up an investigation into Prince Andrew. They didn't feel as if there's enough information in there. In one of the files, and I will do better referencing as I go along, in one of the files is a claim that the bodyguard was on the island with Prince Andrew. I think it's a claim from Steve Scully, which you can see in the Netflix documentary. So you're going, okay, so we've got a witness statement saying he was on the island. We've got a witness saying there was a bodyguard, but we've got Crusader Dick saying there's no evidence. Nick Ferrari even asked her, have you gone through the bodyguard notes, the security service notes? She refused to answer. I'm not going to answer that, Nick, is what she said. And yet it turns out, if she had actually bothered to do her job, we would have found out 10 years early, maybe it was a little bit less than that, maybe it was 5 years, we would have found out a few years ago that Mandelson and Prince Andrew were handing over state secrets and would have been arrested. So because she didn't do
Can I just ask you a really quick question as well? Because I feel like nobody's asked this question, Alex. If the US government have had these files for years, that means they knew that people like Mandelson shared this information. Why is our government only finding out about that when the files are released? You would think that an ally, whether it's under Biden, whether it's under Trump, or this might not even reach their desk, why wouldn't they inform the UK government, our closest ally, that we've got these files that say Mandelson, leaked information to Epstein? Why wouldn't they give our government that? So much stuff just doesn't make sense.
So I'll give two bits of reasoning there. The argument from the Democrats and the Biden administration was that it was under investigation that didn't come to an end until Trump came in. And if that was true, which I've not researched, but that's their claim coming from the Biden Democratic Party to justify their non-looking into this, I go, fair enough. There's an investigation going on. You don't want to disrupt it. As for the allies part, I'm not convinced. It's do what we say, not what we do, and you will do as we say. That is the American. It's like Baldrick. If you're a Blackadder fan, we're not equals with the United States. We're unfortunately subservient in so many ways. So I mean, I'll give an example, because a lot of people, obviously, some of the people on the right and right-wing media have been saying, oh, we should go in with Iran, they're our allies. Donald Trump has put pressure on, being like, oh, you're the Rolls Royce of allies, but you're a bad ally right now, and we'll remember this forever. They didn't really help us with the Falklands, if you want to take that into consideration, because obviously that's still a contentious issue. With the Belgrano leaving the waters and firing it as they were retreating, we can debate that. But they didn't help with that. And you go, it's always been this one-way thing. And I think the Epstein files really just sort of cement that to quite an extent. Why weren't these files shared with us? Why was it not brought up that Mandelson was handing over state secrets? But it also says something about Epstein. I think, from my perspective and from what I've looked, I'd say he was a spy for hire, and he had leanings towards the US government and Israel. but I think he was still for hire to the highest bidder. And that's a part of the reason why he was getting so much money. And you said it earlier, you said 500 million that never seems to go above 500 million. The accountant was interviewed. Epstein's accountant, Khan, was interviewed yesterday.
Richard Khan. I'll be honest, I haven't actually caught up on that yet, so I'll be interested to see what you know.
Leon Black is a private equity billionaire, and he was asking Epstein for advice, according to Khan and the data that Khan's provided. Would you like to guess how much Leon Black was offering for that advice from Epstein? And I'll give you a hint. It's millions.
Go on.
How much
Just to quickly add in there, because obviously I can't put everything in, but now it's coming up. There's emails showing that Leon Black invested $5 million and then more into, guess where? MIT. That's through the same speculative, potentially crypto, pathway. I'm going to use the pathway because I don't want to use other words that'll get me in trouble. But yeah, he invested millions into MIT, just as an FYI for you as well, because we're learning stuff of each other right now.
Yeah, I love it.
It's wild.
150 million.
Wow.
One of the top equity investors in the world needed advice from Epstein, and he charged 150 million. That's
expensive.
Well above average. That's what I thought. Oh, I have no idea about this world. Maybe that's a okay-ish sum. I have no clue. But the reading is no. But then you were saying he never gets over 500 million, but he just got paid 150 million. This doesn't add up. I think I've seen some researchers say or claim that he'd need to be on 50. He'd need to be spending to run the island, the ranch, and New York, and the jets, because he didn't just have one; he had multiple helicopters and everything else. Conservative estimates are about 50 million a year. That's conservative. Higher end, 90 million a year. And as we could see from the ranch and the island, he was doing it up. So he was spending a fortune to make those things an operation hub. And of course, they're all isolated. We've got statements from victims saying that they were legging it. They were swimming off the island to get away from the island, because essentially it's a prison. But I also realized it was a hub. So if you wanted someone from Russia to meet someone from Israel, that island was like a privatized Switzerland, where you could bring people on board, and you've got this private island, no police. You could talk about anything you want. And it seems like from the Epstein files, but also, and this doesn't get mentioned enough, the emails from Barak, the former prime minister of Israel.
Ehud Barak, yeah.
I always struggle with the surname, and that's the first name. It's my dyslexia. Apologies.
Do you want me to insert something interesting I found about Barak?
Yes, I've been talking too much. Apologies.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So, obviously, you mentioned the intelligence thing, right? Again, I think these people are probably heavily biased, but there's a podcast out there called The Rest is Classified. I'm sure you can guess which podcasting company it's part of. But it's a former British intelligence guy and a former American guy, and I was actually slightly annoyed at them. They did a podcast episode dedicated to, is Epstein an Israeli spy? And they did a separate one, which is he a Russian spy? I was annoyed because they actually did one of the podcasts before the files came out and then one of them after. And the one that they did before the files came out was the Israeli one. And then the one they did it after was the Russian one. So it's kind of like they actually didn't do the podcast in a fully informed way, despite the fact that, well, actually, we didn't actually know exactly when the files were coming out, so fair to them. But they argue, in their opinion, is that there's actually just as much evidence in the files, and I somewhat agree to a certain extent, that he was Russian intelligence, that he was Israeli intelligence. But I do actually lean more towards what you were just saying as well, this idea of like freelance, because I feel like the one thing I found as well, I talk so much about Palestine, I talk so much about Israel, talk so much about the Middle East, and people who are focused on that topic will only ever see what they want to see. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because people will only focus on like the Israeli side, understandably why, with Epstein. but there is so much evidence out there as well that he did stuff for Russia. There's a really actually interesting email chain on Reddit that somebody compiled that I read up a few weeks ago, where it's all the claims in the files without proof, but claims of literally Epstein saying he is going to meet Putin or that he's meeting Putin's financial advisor. You can't actually see in the files that there is actual evidence of those meetings actually happening, because sometimes you can see in his like schedules that he has like a regular meeting with this person, or there's an email chain confirming the meeting with the person in there. But there are tons of emails linked to Putin and Putin people, and at least I think, if I remember correctly, there's at least 8 or 9 claims throughout that entire period where we have the files that he might have met up actually or been in the orbit physically of Vladimir Putin. And I do find that interesting. Now, sorry, I was actually bringing that back to Ehud Barak. Now, people will just think that, like, oh, if he's hanging around with a former prime minister, like, you know, he's beholden to the state of Israel. There is an email chain that I found. I'm going to be honest. I can't remember who he's exchanging this conversation with. It might be Steve Bannon, where he's actually talking about helping Ehud Barak get into power in Israel. But he's almost having this conversation with, again, I think it was Bannon, where it's like he doesn't even like know. It's almost like Epstein's like taking it upon himself to do this, because it was at a time when Netanyahu has been, this is 2018, 2019, when Netanyahu has been accused of lots of crimes. He's being brought up on charges. The current case against Netanyahu goes back to 2018, 2019 that he's currently on trial for right now. And it's almost like he's having this conversation without Ehud. Like, it's almost like saying, like, it's almost like he sounds like he wants to use Ehud, which might shock people when you talk about it that way, because it's almost like Epstein's using a former Israeli prime minister and not the other way around. I get the sense, and this is just my personal opinion, but I do believe that the guy who runs Dropsite News, can't remember his name, good guy on this topic, he comes to a similar conclusion, which I have, that this guy was almost like just doing his own thing, especially in the last few years. It doesn't even seem like, from my impression in the files, that he's doing so many things in so many different places that conflict with each other. Like, he's going from, you know, Israel to Russia, right? Russia backs Iran. You've got him meeting with the PM of Qatar consistently, who the Israelis hate. You've got him going to the UAE. You've got him going to Saudi. He's messing in Mongolia. Like, it seemed like to me he was completely and utterly freelance. Maybe at one point he wasn't. Maybe he got brought up by one of these services and that's how he got into the world. He seemed completely freelance to me, but that's just my interpretation.
So you'd say freelance for hire, spy for hire?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say spy. I wouldn't say spy. I'd say intelligence, because
No.
I feel like spy kind of gives James Bondy vibes. I feel like he was just like an operative, like in a way. Like, he was a guy who could do things, get things done, as opposed to, I don't think he was, you know, scaling up walls and stealing things from, you know, foreign countries through, you know, I don't know, jumping through lasers or anything like that. Catherine Zeta-Jones is in my head right now. Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
That would have been a combo. Yeah, I feel that as well, and I think it started like the Ponzi scheme that he was involved in the 1980s with Steve Hoffman's really interesting, because Steve Hoffman was caught on camera. Well, not caught. He was interviewed on camera, and he said that when they were all pulled in for this massive Ponzi scheme that they'd all been involved in, including Epstein, he said something to the effect of, "Oh, I was told by Epstein that he was part of the DOJ, so he was all right, and not to implicate him." And you're going, is that a con? Did he con Hoffman in order to get him to back off? Which is something else he seems to do. Like, we were talking off air about this, and we were saying, just because Epstein says it doesn't mean it's real. So is that real with the DOJ, or is that just made up nonsense that he told Hoffman? Is all the scheming and everything else something you got to take with a pinch of salt? And this is, again, us going back down that rabbit hole, you know, with those key terms we were talking about earlier of pizza and jerky, and ice cream, I think, is another one or shrimp. That's another mad shit one. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on this? I forgot to ask.
Say whatever you want. I was just going to say, can I bring up the Qatar thing that I told you earlier?
Yes, tell me more. I want to hear, because this, like, you and I seem to like have gone through these files so much, and we're not. I don't even think we're touching the surface. And please tell me about Qatar. I'd love to know.
So I want to preface this with something what you've just said. there's so many things in the files that they claim that they're a part of. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are. Like the Theresa May timeline of like Epstein and Bannon talking about how they're taking down Theresa May. Just because she eventually got taken down, it doesn't mean like it was actually them. But they're claiming that they were definitely a part of it. They were trying, but whether it was actually them that did it, you can't ever actually say that. And I think that's really important to point out. But the Qatar thing is just hilarious. I was just browsing through random messages on his iPhone, and I came across a message with some Israeli billionaire that I have never heard of in my life. His name's Benny Shantai, and I can't remember even what he's like rich for. And they're just texting. It didn't even seem like they text that often, which is interesting. And then there's just like one bit of one bit of text, which is really interesting, where Benny texts him saying, "Have you seen the news today in Qatar?" And then Epstein replies something along the lines of like, "Yeah, it looks like our meeting was really successful." And then he texts something back like, "Oh, like well done, good job," or something along those lines. I'm slightly paraphrasing here. And I was like, what could they be talking about? So I Googled the day of when they were texting. And this was in 2018. And it was the day of when Qatar entered what was called the Qatari diplomatic crisis, where the entirety, or almost the entirety of the Gulf states basically said a big fuck you to Qatar. They cut off diplomatic ties, relations, did some sort of like economic blockade on them. And this was a massive moment in like Middle East modern political history. It was a huge thing at the time. And it's kind of like in these messages, who knows? Maybe it could be something completely else. But what else could it be that they're claiming to be a part of on, like, you know, one of the biggest points of modern political history in Qatar, of it happening on that day? And it's just wild that they think that maybe they were a part of this, or maybe they were. And that's just kind of wild to me, that like there are messages out there that exist like that still again haven't been reported on. But it's a case of, again, of like, if we stop for a second and think about all these dickhead tech billionaires and bros who think that they're basically, you know, got messiah complexes and all of this, and they think about, it's the way Trump thinks as well, right? He genuinely thinks he's the greatest president ever. So, you know, just because like Epstein might have, you get what I mean, right? Like just because Epstein's like in a room that he was like potentially trying to influence something, he can maybe walk away from that and think, I did that. I'm going to tell people I did that, so I get credit for it, and I look cool and I look powerful. So who knows what the actual truth is? But the fact that even those text messages exist should be, again, another conversation that we could have. It's just insane to me.
I can't say too much, but I often have the same thoughts and reflections when it comes with football. A couple of my players, I can't say too much, but they're close to getting to qualification within the World Cup. And you feel like, oh, was I part of that journey? Was I just a little bit of the influence in that journey? You don't quite know, do you? But with someone like Epstein, he's such a narcissist, and so Steve Bannon, that they would take claim for that and go, you know, oh, that little stone caused that boulder to fall, which meant that everything came in our way. The flip side of that, and again, this is the rabbit hole. We know Steve Bannon was involved in Cambridge Analytica. We know that was a significant part of why Brexit came through. And as a result, you're going, so that guy does have influence at some level, and he had funding. And sometimes you don't need that amount of, I mean, you know, Brexit was something that came over the line and was very close. And you go, that probably did push it. And it's not just me saying that. There were two whistleblowers from inside the campaign that came forward and said, we're pretty sure that's the thing that got us over the edge. And so if you're knowing that Steve Bannon's done that, it does sometimes feel plausible that he could have done that as well. And this is where you get this sort of grey area. And we know he was working with Peter Thiel. And I've got to ask, because I've not had a chance to look at this. Have you looked into the tech bros? Have you looked into Peter Thiel and the emails between him and Epstein? Because it's a failing area on my part. And you were just talking about tech bros.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff with some of the tech bros. I'll be honest, like there's some stuff, the Peter Thiel stuff I have looked into because he's linked to the crypto world, but I haven't gone too deep into the Thiel part.
He seems pretty mad. I mean, his take on Lord of the
guy
Rings.
the guy who's currently doing an Antichrist tour around Europe's a bit mad. Are you sure?
I've only caught wind of this. What is this tour? Because I've read his interpretation of Lord of the Rings, and it's abominable. Like, it's insane. It's
He's been doing this for
not
years.
what Tolkien was talking about at all. Sorry.
No, he's been doing this for years. Antichrist tours. Like he goes around talking about how like climate change is the Antichrist. And I think the other day he was in Europe and he made news. And I think in Berlin maybe. And then it just like a couple of years ago he was doing a tour around America talking about the Antichrist. And this is the guy who has all of our data.
Well, again, that rabbit hole appears. He's
Yeah.
in the NHS, and I was looking at this the other day. The data he's got from the NHS is unbelievable, and he said that the NHS is our religion and should be gotten rid of, and we gave him the data.
And who runs Palantir in the UK? Oh, come on, you must know this.
Oh no, I can't know everything.
Who's Britain's most famous fascist in history?
Nigel Farage,
Bit further back.
Mosley, Oswald Mosley.
His grandson runs Palantir
You
in the UK.
lie.
I'm not. You didn't know
lie.
that?
I did.
Yeah.
I can't know it. This is just too much. Like, it's just too much. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
historian. I mean, I knew. I thought. I did wonder about what happened to Mosley's like.
We're all learning today.
parenting. Yeah, we are. Oh my god, yeah. I'm happy. I love it. Like, this is what I love about these conversations and bringing people together like this. It's so interesting. Oh my god, that's so disturbing. And Palantir is obviously Lord of the Rings. That's a Lord of the Rings term. For
Wait. So, like, there's nothing to be afraid of, guys. Like a guy who does Antichrist tours around the world, who named his company after an evil, all-seeing eye from a fantasy movie, which is used by the bad guys, who's hired the grandson of the most famous fascist in British history. They've got all of our data and they're integrated into our governments and have massive power. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of, guys.
It's all gonna be fine.
But yeah, we'll have to. Actually, I want to move on to your story in just a moment, actually, because obviously you have your own other things that you're bringing here. Because I think we could turn this to like a 5-6 hour thing, probably longer. But I do want to emphasize again that there are so many emails in the file, so many messages, specifically coming back to Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein, where they are discussing specific political interference. And I'll leave you with this as well, which is in the files, when they're discussing how to potentially put money in different places, they discuss something called a 501c, which is like it's a non-profit organization in America, which is allowed to handle political money, because obviously most charities are restricted from it, but there is a special status that you can use. They were discussing how they could use this as a function to move money around. Does everybody remember that Steve Bannon did actually go to jail for stealing money from the Build the Wall Fund? Would you like to know what mode of financial institution that they used for this dodgy money that Steve Bannon not allegedly stole, did steal, because he went to jail for it? It was a 501c, the exact same financial institution or form or movement of money through a further financial system as they discussed in the files of Jeffrey Epstein. He actually got caught doing it. And they discuss how they could also do this in Europe. There is literal speeches in the files that Epstein is helping Bannon write as he's about to go on British media, as he's about to go on French media. Like, Epstein gives him feedback. He helps him set up meetings. He is helping him coordinate with him every single day. And the fact that this has made barely any attention is very, very highly frustrating. And again, just to re-emphasize, don't sue me. There is no evidence in the files that anybody that I mentioned today knowingly received any money from Jeffrey Epstein or Steve Bannon. But this is just speculation from what is in the files. Now, we could talk about this all the time, but Alex, let's talk about Tony Blair quickly. Would you like to talk to me about what? Would you like to talk to me about what you have found?
Shall we just say rabbit hole every time we go into these like odd spaces?
Rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm going to read out the document number. It's EFTA 012488865. And it's a FBI witness interview summary from a lady who, I mean, the story is wild. So essentially, she claims she meets a Norwegian billionaire in London. And from there, he invites her to the south of France to stay on a yacht. And she doesn't know the person who owns the yacht, but she agrees to go. She then claims that the Norwegian billionaire, and these are all allegations, she claims the Norwegian billionaire tried to break into her room on the yacht. The owner of the yacht, a Swedish billionaire, did not like that. And he essentially got her moved, and the security services on the boat, supposedly ex-Mossad, basically gave her instruction on what to do if the guy tried to break in. He doesn't. She returns to London, and from there, according to her, the Norwegian broke into her room and attacked her, or broke into her flat. He then turns around and says to her an apology and gives her £10,000. I mean, this is the maddest. This is just mad. But the final thing is, after that, at some point after that, and this is what she's telling the FBI, is she's suggesting that she was invited to a party by this Norwegian. And it's a bit spurious at this point, because I think you could take it either way. But she suggested that she was invited to a party and that Bill Clinton and Tony Blair were either there at the party or somehow nearby. And the Norwegian billionaire is asking her to sleep with Bill Clinton. And that's the witness interview. So that's document. Yeah, that's what's in the document. That's the first one. And you're going, you can look at that in any different way. And again, it's just an allegation. There's no proof to back it up. And I will say that all the way through this because they are just allegations. But this is pretty damning stuff. And it's really weird that the press haven't brought this up. And when Bill Clinton was interviewed, to my understanding, I don't think this is brought up, even though it's an FBI document. Like, he was not asked about it in the, not the testimonial, what's it called? It's not debrief. I've forgotten the term.
Oh, the did you say testify? Oh, I know what you're talking about. Obviously, when the committee hearing.
The committee hearing, yeah, we'll call it that from now on. Yeah. So that, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Lewis?
Well, I was just double checking who it was who said this. It might have been Virginia Giuffre, it might not have been, but obviously one of the Epstein victims has said, was it Giuffre? I was just checking now, who said that she knows a former prime minister who was involved in something like this, but she never said whose name it was. That is an allegation that is out there, but that was like one of the more credible allegations, meaning like she knew that it happened and she never named who the person was. She did say prime minister though. Was it Giuffre? I was just going to check. Because everyone was kind of thinking it was like Ehud Barak because his name really didn't come out immediately.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Virginia Giuffre. It was in her book.
Yeah,
I was just double checking. She alleged that this is her words, that she was brutally raped by a well-known prime minister, and that's all she said.
Yeah.
And again, this is obviously still speculation. There are lots of allegations in the files where, and just to remind everybody, after obviously Epstein became like at its peak of a story, the FBI obviously opened up to anyone being able to submit an allegation. This is where some of these stories have come from about like people eating babies and other stuff like that. And not to discredit this story at all, because obviously you found some other stuff in the files too.
Well, it's funny about talking about eating babies. I mean, we went on about the code, but there was other allegations that have come out recently from witnesses on I think TMZ. Not to plug another channel, but I think they've done some interviews where they were suggesting satanic rituals were taking place with Epstein. He was making satanic references. So you're just going, anything seems to be, well, I mean, they're looking for 2 bodies on the ranch. Yeah. And there were some things in the email that was sent to the radio host who then took it to the FBI. I mean, that in itself is a story, because the FBI didn't act. So they were informed by the radio host there were 2 bodies on that ranch. They didn't act, and then they left the ranch. But it got worse and weirder because the state of New Mexico requested access to the ranch to investigate it, and they were told to stand down by the FBI. But no explanation has been. The FBI are all over this, by the way. I'm happy to say that. The head of Palm Beach also insinuated, I know you want to go in the files, but the point being is like this pattern keeps on turning up where significant parts of power seem to be covering this up or doing an extremely bad job to the point where they should be in jail minimum, and no one from the FBI has been sent to jail over these huge mishaps. But okay, so we could go on to the next one, which is document EFTA 01648946, And that's an internal administrative summary done by the FBI. And we're not sure where this is, because you and me were going a bit back and forth on this.
Mm,
But there is a key term in there, which is, I'm paraphrasing here, but do you know where the document is with Tony Blair orgy? That's what they're asking. And you're
yeah.
going, what is this? Is this referring to what we just talked about, which is possible, with the witness statement and the Norwegian billionaire? Is it, and this is why it's so convoluting, is because the subject heading between the internal memo, between the FBI, reads out, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Lewis, witness statement, cellmate witness statement. Well,
Yeah,
the cellmate
referring to Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate, yeah.
which we believe would likely be Tartaglione, who is this roided up. I mean, you could do entire hours just talking about his death, which is so bizarre. But he's this roided ex-police officer, skinhead, who murdered 4 people and apparently hated people like Jeffrey Epstein. And they put him as a cellmate. But now he's coming out for some very odd reason, and for some reason we don't quite understand, talking about, or possibly talking about, or alleging something to do with Tony Blair and orgies. And you and I went through that, and we were going back and forth, and we were going, is it referencing that? Is it referencing something else? Is it, dialogue after the fact, and they've just kept the chain going after talking about Tartaglione?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell.
So
But again,
you then go on.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. I'll go. Okay.
You go.
Too polite. You then go, if it is Tartaglione, why would he be referencing Tony Blair? That in itself is really like a roided up, drug dealing police officer from New York. That's just like, it's really, I could say it's odd. I'm not saying in any way, shape or form that there's anything to this. I'm saying these are allegations coming from inside. But I will add, because I think you brought up some really interesting points. I will add, I could not find that witness statement from Tartaglione anywhere in the files. Now, it could still be there, but I find that really weird that it's not there after the FBI releasing a document referencing it.
Yeah, and we obviously just to put it out there, just generally, we know, and as multiple members of Congress have said, and as everybody's deducted anyway, that there has been multiple names redacted from these files, which don't make any sense. They're not victims, they're just people's names, right? It doesn't make any sense how certain people who are obviously, investors or finance people, why have they redacted random people's names? Because they're obviously protecting people. There's no reason to redact it. The same way, was it AP News who figured out from using other files that there was missing files, and then they basically lodged like an inquiry, and then then obviously this was just like 2 weeks ago, right? I think, where they went, oops, we forgot to release these files, and then they released them, and it was literal accusations against Trump. Do you remember this from like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I do.
I'm just making sure, just because obviously the war is kind of distracting everyone. Coincidence, as some people would say, but yeah,
I'm happy to say it. I'll say it's a distraction because it makes no sense. That Iran war makes. Sorry, I feel like I interrupted you there. Sorry, Lewis.
No. But because we will have to move on to comments in a few minutes. But I'll let you speak.
There's no logic to it. I've written books on military tactics, strategy, war. I've even had the pleasure of being able to say I lectured on the subject. It made no sense, like strategically, tactically, anything. It was just completely out of nowhere, and we had it was a CIA or FBI officer quit, saying he couldn't.
Oh, that was the head of counterterrorism. Was his name something Brent? Everyone's already forgotten about him, but yeah, the head of counterterrorism.
But he quit because he said it didn't make any sense, and it was morally objectionable. I'm paraphrasing again, but you're going, that's pretty serious for someone that high up to say that, and you're going, none of this makes sense. That's why they had no escort service set up for Strait Hormuz. Like none. And you're going, so you haven't planned for this at all. But then again, you could say the same about the Iraq War and Afghanistan, Vietnam. I don't think they ever had a plan for any of them. They just don't learn from history. Do we want to go on to a couple of the emails? I think there might be
yeah.
one more.
Please share. Yes.
EFTA 001444, so that's 3 4s, 01. And this is Sunak correspondence from someone claiming to be an Epstein victim. And the interesting thing I found about that was that they referenced the legal firm representing Epstein victims. And you could argue that the emails are extremely emotive. But if you know anything about PTSD, that is somewhat normal because you're having to relive those events as you're expressing them. And she seems to be demanding Rishi Sunak and his office get off their ass and actually do something about this. And again, she makes a list of allegations. And one of the people she alleges is involved is Tony Blair. And she's asking Sunak, what are you going to do about it? So you're going, again, it's an allegation. There's limited evidence. But these things keep popping up. And it's weird. And I find it even weirder, but maybe it's down to the law, that the mainstream media haven't picked this up because they work on making money, selling papers that would sell, even if you very clearly pointed out it was just an allegation. So I'm going, what on earth is going on with our press? And we know that the press suppress stuff. Now, Max Clifford was one. He was in a Louis Theroux documentary, and he openly said, you got a problem, come to me, pay me X amount of money, and the story will disappear. He said that on camera, and he was like one of the biggest newspaper owners. We've had allegations against Robert Maxwell's paper, and I've sent this news story that we've just been discussing today to 4 major newspapers. None of them come back, bar one. I'm not going to name them. And they said, do you have the file notes? And I've read out those numbers, sent them the PDFs, went dead. No interest. And I find that bizarre.
Like, I obviously shared some experiences with you on the phone earlier. I can't talk about some of them, but it'll make sense in the future. Leaving you guys on the edge. But what I can say is that I've also sent lots of information to lots of different journalists on the phone with them, walked them through it. Some very big names, and I will say I'm not going to say any names or organizations. There are some of them who have helped dig, found it interesting, and again, people do, obviously, they can't just, pick up a story and be like, right, I'm going to focus the next 5 weeks on this, right? These people have to, meet multiple deadlines for multiple different reasons. But I was actually shocked that there's only actually been one organization who were like really interested, and they've taken a lot, and they've taken some of the stuff that I've handed to them, and it's been incorporated into some things. But almost everybody else, almost like just no oomph, no follow up. And I find myself confused how I actually credit myself as a person who is not a person who's a conspiracy theorist, in the sense of like, I pride myself on like, here is a fact, here is a fact, here is a fact. Sometimes you have to speculate a little bit because that's what you have to do to figure out what a story is sometimes. And I'm just finding myself really frustrated that I have found these emails about, them discussing millions of crypto. I've found all these different pieces of evidence which very clearly add up to interference, and it's not been spoken about. And it's really, really frustrating. And I can talk more about it in the future, but in a couple of months, they'll make sense.
Do you feel YouTube is the final pushback against this type of behavior, that it's pretty much near impossible to be able to hide stories like this because eventually it will come out? Or do you feel it's not powerful enough yet?
I don't know, because as a person who mostly posts on places like TikTok, that we're very subject to the algorithm. And for the first couple of weeks of the Epstein files coming out, I was posting, getting absolutely mega views, and then I was busy, I was moving, and I've done some follow up. And I feel, again, people speculate this. I just feel very suppressed on there when I bring up this topic now.
Mm.
Also, as well, on top of that, every time I try and discuss a lot of the investigations into like Nigel Farage and crypto, which they've just banned it now and stuff like this, all of these types of stories of just like hidden money and hidden networks and all this type of stuff, I feel very suppressed on that platform when I post these things, as opposed to most of my videos generally get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of views. And these videos don't do very well on TikTok. That's my experience.
I sometimes wonder that with Brexit as a similar topic, is it suppression of the topic, or is it because the population have just gone, don't want to
Yeah.
talk about it anymore? And it's very difficult to tell. But sometimes what you've described there, that says to me that would be a front page story. Make sure you got the, if I was the editor in chief, I'd be like, make sure you got the evidence, make sure you got 3 of whatever of each piece of evidence to back it up, and then you go with the story. That, what we just discussed today, I mean, that's pretty bad. One piece of pushback I got from someone was, oh, it's just people who hate Tony Blair. That's plausible. And I went, it is. And then they said, but that could be the main thing. And I was like, but Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage are really hated, like really passionately hated. Their names haven't come up in the same level as this. There's only this small clique that have had the name over and over again. Like Les Wexner has his name over and over. Prince Andrew over and over. Donald Trump
But
over and
just
over.
to jump on one thing though, because I don't want to miss this bit. Which former prime minister right now has been working very closely with Donald Trump, not just by joining the board of peace, but also actually, according to the Financial Times, is a very fantastic investigation on this months ago, actually helped create the board of peace and the Gaza plan. Who is that?
Would it be Tony Blair by any chance?
John Major, obviously. No. But yeah, like, why is it that Tony Blair's been so comfortable with Trump recently? It's just, obviously he's a former prime minister who's committed war crimes, right? Okay, like he's that guy. He's been working with the Saudis through the Tony Blair Institute, doing really bad stuff. But you would think that the guy who's currently going ham on the UK, going ham on NATO, going ham on the world, you'd think you'd want to distance yourself a little bit. But no, he's right up there on the Board of Peace member, wanted to be the leader of it. And actually his institute actually helped create it, and they lied about helping to create it because the Financial Times caught them lying in their investigation. I don't know if you remember this, but they said, have you been working with the Trump administration on the Gaza peace, the Gaza plan? And they were like, no. And they were like, oh, here's the evidence that we have. And they were like, maybe. Like, it was a really good move from the Financial Times that they did it in that way. And they were just like, oh, we were on one call, maybe. And then it came out that basically, like they drew up the blueprints for big parts of like the Gaza Riviera board of peace shit, all that type of stuff, that they were involved, but lied about it.
So we go.
Just saying.
I get it. First thing I go, he thought he could control George Bush. He couldn't. And I'm going to say it, a fucking idiot for thinking that he could control America in any way. And then it wouldn't surprise me if the same tactic's being done here. Oh, I'll go and work with Donald Trump and control him. No one controls Donald Trump. I don't even think Donald Trump controls Donald Trump. I don't know what
control his own bladder. Sorry, I had to. Right, we're behind because we could talk about this for hours. Is there anything else that you want to slip in very quickly before we go to the comments?
No, I think we
probably
really
shouldn't use the term slip in when we're talking about this.
Yeah, I did think that.
Apologies. That was not intentional.
It's all good. It's all good. At least from my side. Look, the things that are coming across, I think we've dug in deep. We're getting praises from people in the chat. I can see they're pretty happy with.
I think we should probably come back to this
format. Oh, I'm happy to, because I've got Gordon Brown stories to tell you. He's in the files. No one's talking about.
I did find Clegg in the files, but it didn't really go anywhere. Like Epstein was asking how he could use Clegg through one of his friends, but then there's not really much else. But I found that interesting.
You made me remember something, because you talked about that meeting with Nigel Farage. Like, Bannon claimed he was meeting with Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, Rees-Mogg, and I think there might have been a fourth person.
It was like David Davis or something like that.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
There is a photo of the day after of Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson meeting in a Chinese restaurant in central London with Stanley Johnson. So,
I think I've
you
seen
know,
this.
yeah, it was a big story because everyone was like, "What are you doing?" And their excuse was, "Oh, it's just a random chance." And Nigel came over to say hello, but he was also really angry that that picture got leaked. So it's just again the Qatar thing. Is that a coincidence? Is it a coincidence he had a meeting with Boris, or he claimed he had a meeting with Boris? Because they've all denied it. They said that no meeting took place, and it's a bit of an odd meeting to take place. But then there's a photo the next day released in the papers of Farage,
It's not
Boris,
even
and
just like
Stanley
it's not even
Johnson.
just like one text though. It's literally like Bannon's texting Epstein like, "I'm in the room with them right now." Like, why would he lie about that? Like, they would have never known that these texts were eventually going to come out. Like, why would he lie about being in the room with them right now and arranging meetings with them, seeing them at 2 o'clock? Like, these texts are all out there. But right, we will have to go to comments because we are far behind. And I'm excited to see them because this is like an unusual episode.
I'm gonna actually say someone's actually demanded we speak for another 20 minutes. Like,
Hi
just keep
everyone. So
going.
I just saw
go.
that one.
Oh, hi,
That's
Callum.
hi. That's Deus Ex who said you guys are all over the place. Go on for another 20 minutes and go through all the files in chronological order. In all seriousness, though, I think this needs like a 7 till 11, like 4 hours of just
Yeah.
deep diving. And if people want to see that, let us know in the comments, and we'll make it happen at some point
But like,
when everyone's free. But
I'll quickly slip this in. Like one of the journalists that everybody will know who I talked to about some of the stuff that I found. When I got on the phone with him, it took me an hour and a half of straight talking just to explain one story and everything
yeah.
that I found related to it. Like this is how big this is. But
And
anyway, go on.
can I just say, by the way, just to sing your praises, Lewis, because Lewis has been working on this basically since the files landed. Like every other day, he's there in the group chat, like, I've just discovered this and nobody's reporting on it. I've just discovered this
It's
and
not
nobody's
healthy,
reporting on
guys.
it. But you know what? In fairness, somebody actually said, in fact, see if I can find the comment. But somebody actually. Talked about it was Jim Speak said Lewis's investigative journalism work is a cut above the average professional full-time journalist, and actually there is still, like you've already spoken about, Lewis, there is still so much more to come out from this that we can't talk about at the moment, that like it's completely insane. And I just want to take a moment just to big you up, because the work that you've been doing, that you're not getting paid for, that you're not getting any remuneration for, and like Alex has alluded to as well, stuff that a lot of other journalists won't even touch because they just don't want to even go there, whether it's because they're protecting people or because they're worried about being sued or whatever it may be. Like there is so much more to this that you've been able to uncover because you've actually bothered to spend the time looking for things like spelling mistakes. It's an obvious thing to do, searching Nick Clegg's name and spelling it differently to see whether something comes up, and then suddenly there's all these extra files that you didn't know about.
I've done that with everybody's name, by the way. I've spelled everybody's name in like 10 different ways.
Yeah, it's got to be
Because that's what you have to do. It's wild.
It's true.
It's got to be done. But just starting with our super chats. So Subsystem Vids has gifted 20 turn left memberships, so thank you very much for those.
Thank you, Subsystem.
We do really appreciate it. Deus Ex has gifted a turn left membership as well, which I think went to Rohan, so thank you so much for that one.
Thank you.
Baron von Coxlap has donated £10. I'll get it right eventually. Great show tonight. Love this deep dive format. Yeah, if you want to see more of it, let us know, and we'll get these two back together, and we can do a 4-hour.
It's the only Baron I'll take. The only Baron bourgeoisie name I'll take money off of.
And Specs has also gifted 5 turn left memberships as well. Specs, thank you for those. Where to start? There's so much going on, but so we've had that one. Oh yeah, so Jim Speaks also said, guys, the cameras all failed and the guards were all asleep. Stop being so far-fetched. Like it's that's all it was.
The thing is as well, like
the guards.
The thing is with that, like because this is why I get annoyed that some journalists that I've spoken to haven't done anything with this, or people haven't picked up on this, is because I actually try and stay as much within, like when I say reality, I'm not saying like he was or wasn't killed, but it's like there's obviously lots of weird shit around that, but like the stuff that I found is hard evidence, and they won't even touch that. But with stuff like so many things don't make sense, like the gap in the tape and just everything else. I've literally watched the full tape. I've watched so much of this, and
Did you watch it all the way through?
yeah, unfortunately, 'cause I'm such a loser. Also, as well, as I've gone down other rabbit holes, like this, I'll do 10 seconds of this. Like, there's this big reform donor, this Iranian billionaire family, and when I was looking into them, like, so the guy that they've been accused of in the past of laundering money through, he is the former, he's the former son-in-law of the former president of Kazakhstan, and he was arrested for some shit in like 2015, and then he also turned up very dead in a prison cell after, being locked up in a prison cell in Vienna. Like, again, like, there's too many of these stories out there that I found that are like all connected to, just very rich and powerful people. Like, just go and look up the amount of people who've turned up dead in cells. It's wild, because I come across them I won't say quite frequently, but quite a few times a year. It's just fun.
When you start. So during COVID, to get people through it, I set up a History's Mysteries teaching thing, because I used to be a teacher. History teaching thing for adults. We did a deep dive into JFK. It's exactly the same. It's all over the place. It's all random, but the number of people that died immediately afterwards, or in the 5 to 10 years afterwards, was ridiculous. That was one of the things. Yeah. Just clearing out all the witnesses. I mean, luckily, if you could do enough of digging around, you can actually find a lot of the witness statements, and they're insane. Like, they're really weird witness statements where you're like, he can't be lying. Is he lying? That doesn't make any sense that he's lying. But, Lewis, have we gone?
I can add on to that from what I just said. So that guy that I talked about,
Lewis,
who's
you've
linked to
disappeared.
this,
You've got no signal.
oh balls! Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think my camera's overheated. 1 second.
Oh no.
Why does this? My camera's not. I need to get.
Do we have a flattering photograph of you we can put in its place? I've only got unflattering ones, Lewis. I'm sorry.
But I have this.
This
I
is
have
what
this
happens
really
when you
bad
start
camera angle.
talking about JFK, Lewis. You start talking about JFK and cameras shut down.
That's it. I'm gonna have to use this very bad camera angle. This is left-wing media.
We need to get you a fan for your camera or something.
So what I was about to say is, like, that guy that I was researching, who's linked to this Iranian billionaire family who've been like funneling money, according to the Times, just saying that so I don't get sued, funneling money through a random company which is now funding reform. So this guy that I was researching, and he died in a prison cell because he would like pissed a lot of people off. A few years later, his son, this is the grandson of the Iranian billionaire, the former president of Kazakhstan, he turned up dead in London as well, and he posted on Facebook a few days before. And this isn't, by the way, this is conspiracy. This sounds like so wild. This is reported media, that someone was trying to kill him, and then he literally turned up dead a few days later with an overdose. So in the space of a few years, it's like these two people who are like connected to each other, who've pissed off the former president of Kazakhstan, just both turn up dead in weird and random situations. Like, it happens so much more than people think. I can't get over it.
I just want to bring back in. We've had another super chat. So we've had Kenneth Bosch has donated £5 and said, Lewis the Roo getting in the sauce.
As long as that Roo's gluten free, because I'm a celiac. Thanks, guys. That's such a shit joke. That's such a shit joke. I'm sorry. I am actually a celiac. That's such a terrible joke.
I can't hear Lewis Theroux now without thinking of that's not a paedophile. That's Louis Thurroux from the Manosphere documentary. If you've watched it.
Oh, that was such a bad joke from me. Like a Roo pun, really. I'd love to get Louis Theroux to look into some of this, but he's not really like investigative though, is he? He's more just like making people look like dickheads.
He just meet up. I mean, obviously he can't meet up with Epstein, but like he'd literally like he'd rock up in his prison cell if he was still alive and just be like, so just talk to me for an hour and confess all your sins. We've got Flow Snake's just asked, can you give us a day or two's notice if you're gonna do a long one so I can get some beers in, please?
Oh,
Flow
we
Snake.
will do Flow. Sorry, we didn't actually know we were supposed to be doing an hour. Obviously, we won't be too much longer because I know people want to go to bed and chill out.
Well, Jacqueline said, I keep saying it over and over again. Blair gets more and more like the character in Lord of the Rings who keeps saying "my precious" every year. One of these days, the rest of you will see it. Lol. And Jacqueline also got some stick for capitalizing Lord of the Rings as LOR rather than LOTR, but she's forgiven for that.
That is blasphemy. I have to admit. Sorry, sorry, Jacqueline.
Disappointed.
Nothing will ever be Ash Sarker's like Tony Blair BBC moment. Like because the devil wasn't available is. I'm sorry, that is one of the best lines dropped in modern political media history. Like because the devil wasn't available, like. Ash Sarker, like, thank you for that so much. That was beautiful, and I will always cherish that moment.
Arthur Bumblefoot, hi Arthur, has said, what's wild about the files is Jeffrey Epstein knew that, knew what not to say on them. There are multiple ones with him saying things along the lines of "not on here" because he knew not to, and it shouldn't be said on a recorded place. I mean, how much of these were because obviously. I know a lot of this has been sort of compiled and it's stuff that's sort of come together, but I've never known somebody to record so much of their own criminality. Like so many of the photographs that are in the files are, there's photographs of photographs that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and others had taken themselves. It's almost like they wanted all of this to be uncovered. Like they were documenting everything.
So, like, my impression with them, because I focused a lot on the messages, is that they definitely had multiple phones because they tell to each other to call each other in different lines. They definitely use different things like Telegram sometimes and also WhatsApp as evidence of that, but they're not in the files, which means that they're either missing, they couldn't get them, they're encrypted, and or they're purposely being kept out. Who knows? But I think a lot of the times it is just a case of they definitely use multiple phones. So I think, like, for example, when I brought that Joey Itto text earlier, like every other conversation with Joey through text is very like platonic. And then there's just suddenly that. It felt like, because it was so sudden in that text, the way I interpreted it is like he's just quickly text Joey without thinking that he probably shouldn't put that in a text. Because I don't think these people are like perfect, right? If you actually know anything about spies and this type of stuff, they're not all James Bond, right? Like people are idiots and people mess up all the time. It's true though, isn't it? Like, it's like stuff with like when there's so much stuff out there about like CIA and Mossad. There's so many times that people are fucked up, so many times. And my interpretation is that they were careful only up to a certain extent, and I think there's definitely less emails almost like towards the end as well. Like him and Bannon basically stop emailing each other almost completely, and it's just through text. And then most of the text then lead to phone calls. So they probably shouldn't have put a lot of things in text that they did. But I think even the more important stuff was definitely on the phone as opposed to actually in texts, because so many conversations are incomplete. I don't know.
Have you seen the
Just kind of-
calendar
Huh?
on Gmail? Have you seen the calendars on Gmail?
Oh no, I haven't. Like obviously seen his calendars through the files, but I didn't know. Are they incorporated that now into the Gmail thing?
Yeah. The guy is amazing. Like I've reached out to him to try and get him onto the Sunday roast. Sorry, I just plugged my show there. But if you look at the calendar, you can see the emails dropping off. And interestingly, if you go to 98...
That's interesting because I noticed that, but I never measured that. So that's interesting. That does add up. Sorry, go ahead.
Because I'm just going, well, who's he hanging around with from 98 to early 2000? And we keep hearing this as well. That I think in the files it said there was 15 terabytes of emails and info and videos and everything else. And I think we've only got 3% of the 15 terabytes. Like, that's a huge amount of that. I don't even think that's correct. I think that's only in a certain area or aspect there's 15 terabytes because, as you said, there's phone call conversations. They have got a lot of his mobiles, and he's recording.
Do you know about the secret videos in the files? Do you know about this?
As in the videos that we haven't seen, or the videos that he was taking that were secretive.
No, so it's the files that are like .mov and .mp4 that are in the Epstein files on the DOJ, but they don't actually explain to you how to open them. So I'll give you an example. There are a bunch of files that when you find the number, it will just come up blank. And that means that file is a MP4 or it's an Excel sheet or it's a .mov or a .jpeg. And this is how ridiculous the DOJ are. The only way to access that file is then to go up to the URL and change the .pdf at the end of the URL to a .mp3, and you have to guess which one it is. This is why so much stuff hasn't come out. I'm not joking. This is real. I've found videos.
That's
The
so
first
insane.
This is yeah.
They're
This is how
so
ridiculous.
incompetent.
This is how ridiculous it is on the DOJ. There
I mean, these are the
thousands-
same. Sorry, Lewis. These are the same people that thought that in order to redact it, you just had to literally just change the background of it to black so that it was redacted, and then everyone was able to just copy and paste out the redactions.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have a clue what they're doing, do they?
So I have found videos of bad things where it's like kind of like blacked out just by simply browsing because I found some of the hidden files. I have found because the reason why I figured this out is because somebody on TikTok, I figured it out. They told me this. Someone who saw my videos messaged me on TikTok and they explained to me like, about the secret files, and I was like, oh, who's this fucking weirdo? And I was like, oh fuck, she's right. And then the one that she found, the one that she found is what appears to be, and by the way, I had to use ChatGPT for this. There is a 4-hour recording, and I used Adobe to take the file and put it into a transcript, which isn't always accurate. I have to declare this.
But Lewis has sat and
and
watched
then-
the entire 4 hours as well.
Yeah, because I
because
can't
it's-
sit there and watch the entire 4 hours because there's thousands of these videos that are actually in the files, but you have to find them manually and then guess
insane.
which format they're in. I found there was a 4-hour one that she sent me, which is Jeffrey Epstein doing a secret recording. I can't remember which Gulf leader it is, but it's with either like Mohammed bin Salman or like the Qatar leader, and it's just a 4-hour recording of them talking. Like that's in the files, but you have
As
to
a video or
manually
not an
find it.
audio?
Pardon?
A video, not an audio.
It's
recording.
yeah, this one's an audio file. Yeah, I've got it on my computer.
Jim Speaks brought
Wild.
an interesting point up, and I kind of also, I suppose, would pertain to video evidence. But Jim's asked, is eyewitness testimony no longer evidence? Like, if we've got all these testimonies of things that have happened, why is legal action not being taken against so many people? In fact, I think the biggest, certainly in the UK, the biggest victim, well, I don't want to use that word actually, but the person who has been prosecuted the most out of all of the bad people in this is Mandelson.
Yeah.
So to play a slight devil's advocate, because we have to accept that the FBI authorities, DOJ, whoever is the powers that be, haven't obviously investigated this further and taken it seriously. We all know that. But also at the same time, it is true that, I have to say it, the crazies come out when they get the opportunity to, and there are people in the files who are completely just lying and making it up in terms of their reports, and that has to be said because it's true. It's what weirdly I've experienced this. I used to work at a call center, and we used to get people who obviously had mental health issues. I had to once stay on the phone with a woman for 2 hours when I worked at Burberry. I was the manager, and she wanted to speak to a manager, and she spent 2 hours on the phone with me telling me how Burberry was following her around and stealing her designs and sending people to go and harm her. This happened. These people do exist out there. So what's going to happen when the FBI say anybody who's got information come forward? So not only obviously do they have to deal with all the people who are lying, but they still have to investigate. There's obviously all the genuine ones out there as well. And then obviously finding corroboration on any of these claims would be very hard. We do see in the files that they do try with some of them to, they name some people as credible. And if I remember correctly, the case that came out on Trump a few weeks ago where they released the files and were like, oops, sorry, that was a credible witness named by the FBI. They said that this witness was credible.
We know that obviously, the Met Police and other police forces have done the investigations and are still investigating the whole Mandelson situation. Obviously, we've even seen, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor arrested and taken in for questioning. But what is happening in the US and elsewhere in the world? Have there been other, criminal charges brought, other arrests made, other investigations ongoing by police forces for people named in the files?
Norway.
Norway.
Norway's the only one that's actually got themselves together, and they're actually trying to clear house, and they're setting up a committee. Because Norway, from everything I can tell, is actually doing a decent job of holding anyone and everyone to account. Like they just jailed the Crown Princess's son, who was an absolute reprobate. And on top of that, his mum, the Crown Princess, is equally mad. She was asking Epstein for advice on whether or not she should allow her son to have naked pictures of women up on his bedroom wall. And you're going, this is just mad. Why are you asking Epstein? And this is post-conviction. It's post-conviction. She's asking that advice. I don't know what to make of it. It's totally insane.
Yeah.
But the point being, Norway, yeah, they're pretty awesome.
What's interesting though as well is so there are so many of the key players. I keep wanting to look at my camera, which is now dead. I'm like keep looking over here. There's a few of the people who were key players in like the foreign interference part in Europe. There was one in obviously Norway. His name's Terje von Larsen. So he is the former head of like the Peace Institute, like the most least suspecting guy that you think would be involved. He's massively in the files, especially around Steve Bannon and other foreign interference and stuff. But there's also a guy from Slovakia, and this again barely being picked up. So his name's I'm going to try and pronounce it, Miroslav Lashkak. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. He was at the time of the files coming out. He was the national security advisor for Slovakia, and he is a key player in the foreign interference campaigns in Europe. There is literally this is the first time I came across him. Is that there is an email chain of him meeting. He's in the Vienna ambassador's residence for the Slovakian government, and Epstein is trying to arrange a meeting with Putin in 2018 there. I'm not even kidding. This guy, when he first appears in the files, he is the UN General Secretary. I'm not kidding. They're in the files for years talking to each other. And when he resigned recently, he was the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor in Slovakia.
Of course.
It's wild, like all these people. And like the guys from Norway all connected through Miro. And fun fact as well, sorry, I'll drop this one. The only time I can see Epstein actually doing something active in terms of wanting to either harm somebody actively in the files is a Norwegian guy. I can't remember his name, but he was linked to Terje von Larsen. And you can Google the story. But basically, Jeffrey threatened him and basically said that if you don't sell your apartment for like a massive, like a $10 million dollar apartment in Norway, somewhere in Oslo, if you don't like basically sell your apartment to me, like I'm going to ruin your life. And that's in the files, but then they actually interview him after the files came out, and he basically said like he took him to his Paris apartment, walked him around the room and showed him a picture of every single powerful person that he knows in the world and threatened him. It's the only thing in the files that I could ever find where he's directly threatening somebody. I found it really interesting. It's a Norwegian like millionaire, like they ran like a shipping company or something, his family. I just found it really interesting. But again, still almost like no news on it anywhere else besides Norway.
Have there been any arrests in the US at all?
Nope.
That we know of?
No.
Nope.
It's just
I
insane.
can get the list up, but obviously Congress are now, well, I think they requested, was it 7? So the story came out that obviously Congress people got to see quite a few weeks ago, I think it was like 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, like more unredacted files behind the scenes, and then people were coming out. I think it was like Jasmine Crockett and a few other people were saying there are other people in the files who were directly implicated in crimes. And then weeks later, we found out that Congress, that committee who is investigating this, have now summoned like 7 people, and it's like Bill Gates and like a few other, I cannot remember their names. I think it's Leon Black, Bill Gates, and a few other people that are now getting summoned before Congress to testify, who multiple people have said that they are directly complicit in crimes through their opinion. So that's the only thing that's literally happening in the US. It's just going through Congress.
You've got the head of the FBI saying no one was trafficked on record. Like, that's insane. And no one does anything about it. Like, they're all just... But I mean, you know, I said earlier, I'd say, I'm never going to say 100% on anything. I'm 90% certain this whole thing with Iran is just a cover-up. Like, you look at the Google search, it's all about Iran. Epstein's dropped off like a cliff. Like, it's
Well,
to me, it's no brainer.
Somebody else mentioned earlier, I can't remember who it was, I didn't start the comment, that, so shout out to whoever you were, that Epstein had essentially predicted this in the files as an email somewhere of him talking about, you know, Iran being used as as a cover up or something. I've not got the comment, but it is interesting, isn't it? How, you know, when things, well, it was the same with Venezuela. It was the same with the whole Greenland thing. Like when the conversation globally is on the issue of the files, suddenly Trump decides he's going to invade a sovereign state, or, you know, he's going to start a war. Like, yeah.
I
But
think the thing is,
listen,
I actually push back on this slightly, not because obviously it would make sense and it is convenient that it's distracted, but let's not ever forget that this is who America is. Like, don't ever forget that. Doesn't matter who's the president, that this is what they do. Both Democrats, both Republicans. It's been happening for decades. Don't forget that. Don't ever just think that what's happening now wouldn't happen under any other president. If the
True.
people in power, whether it's the Israelis trying to lobby the US to do this, or other people who are ideologically leaned to wanting to invade Iran, like Pete Hegseth, who wrote a book literally talking about how he literally wants to genocide Muslims. That's
Yeah,
literally in his book.
it's almost letting them off the hook to say it's just to hide away from Epstein, isn't it? So
I've,
Yeah, never forget this is
I'm,
America.
I'm gonna
I've
jump
Can I
down
just
just because of
say
time.
one? I
Yeah, go
I'll
for
just
it.
say one more thing, just
Yeah.
to support that. The Vietnam War was a false flag operation.
Hmm.
They said the USS Maddox was under attack by North Vietnamese. It never happened. No one got prosecuted. No one was arrested. Nothing happened. There were no consequences. The Iraq War, we were told weapons of mass destruction. 45 minutes. It's a load of bollocks. It's a load of bollocks. It was just made up nonsense. And they got us into another war. And now, I mean, Tommy Robinson's posting this. Oh, look, they got weapons of mass destruction in Iran. 45 minutes from destruction again. You're going, it's all false flag operations. They're taking people to war. Obviously, these politicians generally don't send their sons or daughters to war. And you notice
Bone
that...
spurs.
Yeah, bone spurs. Draft dodger in chief. Yeah. Nasty bit of work. But they'll send other people's kids. So I'm not, if that's been going on since the first Vietnam War up until now, it seems like doctrine. Like if you were to, and I promise I'll finish on this, I'm sorry.
No,
If you were to apply the Nuremberg principles, every single president, in my opinion, would be tried and found guilty. Everyone since Eisenhower. Because they've all failed for war crimes, attacking... Trump's literally talking about attacking civilian infrastructure. Like he wants to take all the power plants. That's against the Nuremberg principles. You're not allowed to do that. So the stuff that the Nazis were doing, no one's holding them to account. So it's a corrupted, messed up system, and no one wants to do anything about it. The guy staged a coup. Trump staged a coup. And American press are reluctant to even mention that. And he got re-voted in. It's insane what's been taking place over there.
The same principle pretty much applies to most Israeli leadership as well. It was like, it's kind of funny just to add this in, because this didn't make any news because we're all distracted. But 2 days ago, former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, the other Ehud, said that settlers should be referred to the ICC. That's an Israeli prime minister saying that. But then you need to pause and remember that he's also been accused of committing his own war crimes in the mid-2000s. And actually one of his cabinet members actually came to the UK, and we tried, when I say we, people in the public, tried to use a special law to get her arrested when she came to the UK.
Basically,
and now,
if you've ever...
20 years later, you've got... 20 years later, you've got that same PM who's accused of his own war crimes actually now urging the ICC to investigate Israeli settlers. And again, this made no news, but anyway, I just thought it was interesting.
I was just going to say, if you've ever run a country, or you've ever had £1 billion in the bank, just lock them up, and then we can move on, because it seems like they're all just full to the brim of corruption, and it's madness, isn't it? How but I mean, you see it all the time. The same leaders that lead countries into illegal wars then complain when somebody else has an illegal war. It's you can't do that unless you're me and I did it. It's madness. But listen, we could honestly talk about this for hours. And what's that comment there from Emma?
Ulmer, slightly less evil of the Ehuds. There's so many evil Ehuds.
Let's get Alex back if you're up for it, Alex. Let's get you back with Lewis, and we'll put together. We can maybe do it as a special one-off or something, and do just a whole night of it, because I think people would like to sit and watch this until the early hours of the morning, discussing what's in the files. And there's so much in there. We could probably do a 24-hour stream on it. So
probably could.
I'm not suggesting we should, but
no. way too much coffee. And Lewis, you should come on the Sunday roast.
Absolutely, I would love to. I would love to. I would love to just sit and talk about this or anything else.
But listen, I'm going to step down. But thanks to everyone, and thanks
Thank you,
again for
Callum.
all the super chats and the comments as well. We obviously couldn't do it without you. As you all know, Turn Left is voluntary still, and you can support us at turnleftmedia.co.uk/support if you wish. There's ways on there you can do one-off donations. You can pay monthly as well. You've also got the 99p YouTube memberships as well. But just commenting and sharing our content is always greatly appreciated too. So thank you very much. But I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you, Cal.
Oh, Alex, what are we gonna do? I would happily just. I've got ADHD as well. Like when I hyperfocus, I this is how I managed to be in the files for like 12 to 14 hours a day for like 3 weeks straight. Because I can just hyperfixate when I'm really interested. But yeah, thank you so much for joining today. We could just go on and on and on, but thank you so much for obviously bringing your knowledge today. Do you just want to give both of both of your shows a big shout out again for me?
Political X is the YouTube channel, and Sunday Roast is the podcast on Sunday mornings at 9:45.
On any of the socials?
Blue Sky. Blue Sky. That's it. I struggle to compete with those two. That's more than enough.
At least you're probably like the most ethical person out there. Like, you know, on any of the other big ones, just the Blue Sky. I sadly spend too much time just everywhere. But thank you again for joining us. Send me a message, Alex. And thank you again for joining us today. I know it was like an unusual episode, but when we heard that Alex wanted to come on and chat about Blair, we were just like, let's just make this into a big fat Epstein episode. And we did. Now I'm speaking to you from my laptop, and this looks like the most budget. I swear we're using your money for good things, guys, that you're donating. This is just me. I need to get one of those like replacement batteries in my camera so it never overheats. And I promise I will. But thank you again for joining us. We will be back on Monday, and we will see you then. Wait, who's hosting? I was about to say it, and then I just lost it. Callum? Oh, it's Callum. Yeah, it is Callum. Callum is hosting on Monday. We will see you then.